know, like what's the emotional connection behind that brand? And that really was the start of like changing the whole approach to the marketing and the brand.
You are listening to the Capital Craft Podcast, brought to you by the San Diego Brewers Guild. I am your host, Eric Fowler.
My name is Jeff Fox with Beer Media Co.
And I'm Jordan Hoffart with Black Plague Brewing.
Awesome, man. Thanks for sitting down today. We've been trying to lock this down for a while.
I know, right? I'm elusive. What can I say?
So when you're not, spending your free time skating, what do you do within Black Plague, and how's the brewery doing?
Yeah. So I guess my title is president, co-founder. I'm also the chief operating officer as well. So, as a smaller craft breweries, we tend to wear a lot of hats. So kind of just jump in and getting to a point where we're kind of defining roles a little bit more and getting some core focus on, where's my time best spent kind of thing.
Sure.
So some more structure, which is great. But yeah, 2024, it's a new year. I'd say it's a quite a defining year since COVID. 2020, it's been we actually had a really good trajectory, and we launched in 2017, and then it was like the initial year hiccups and figuring it all out, and then 18, 19, we saw some really positive growth, and there was a lot of momentum behind the brand. And then obviously COVID happened and cut everyone at the knees, and it kind of put us right back at the starting line, if not deeper, because you're still having to you have to pay. You have overhead now that you still have to pay. So those rescue bucks only lasted so long, and you're kind of starting again. So digging back out of that trench honestly was kind of a blessing, because it forced you to take a really critical look at your P&L and your balance sheet. And someone told me, right at the beginning of this game, like, it's a pennies game. And you kind of just like, oh yeah, sure, whatever. And then you're like, what does that mean?
Now you know.
And now you know, because the scalability, like, even if it costs you saving a penny here, once you extrapolate that or multiply that over hundreds of thousands of millions of units, you're like, oh shit, that adds up to a lot of money,
Yeah, and I think what it's done for local breweries too is help them focus on intention and messaging, right? Any of those changes or any decisions that are being made when you're looking at, okay, we have to be really careful what money we're spending and investing on this. It's made sure that everybody has a lot more intention in what they're doing, and there's less, in my eyes, less frivolousness of just throwing a bunch of shit at a wall and seeing what sticks.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, you kind of just you don't have that runway to order to just like do that. What's another saying they say? Well, if you want to make a small fortune in craft beer, you got to start with a big one. And that makes a lot of sense too, in the sense that the margin's not that great in our industry, and it costs a lot of money to live in California. Not just live, but to thrive, I guess, if anyone's doing that these days. So you want to be able to provide a lifestyle to your employees and hopefully yourself, and to where it's not just white knuckling and stressing all the time and like, how am I going to pay rent? What am I going to do? Like, oh, don't get sick because I don't have health insurance, like that, But the quicker that you can get aligned with your staff and your partners, if you have them, and have everybody understand and be transparent about like where you're at and what we really need to do, not how we feel about everything, but what we actually need to do to get to that next level to ensure that there's a future like that. It's like, once you clear those maybe not so comfortable conversations, but everyone kind of goes, oh, okay, that makes sense. Then I think you can start to really build, because everyone's like, okay, it makes sense. This is the common goal. So I think transparency is like a big thing within your organization.
Yeah, I spoke to a brewery owner outside of San Diego recently who implemented open book management, and they were saying, like, our numbers were declining, and I had employees that were like, am I going to lose my job? And he's like, yeah, like you need to figure this out together, or you will lose your job. But enough pessimism. Where's Black Plague at right now? I know you have multiple tap rooms. How many barrels are you looking at doing this year?
Yeah, so we're definitely gonna break 3,000 barrels, which will be the first time ever. It's tough to say right now, but we're like cautiously optimistic. 2024 has definitely been our year from a distribution sales. We are currently up about 36% over this time last year from distribution sales.
That's significant.
Yeah, and we're just kind of approaching the high season.
Who do you distribute with?
So for Southern California, we distribute with Carl Strauss, who was partnered with us, was our distributor from day one, actually, in 2017. So we were super fortunate with that, and we've had a long-term relationship with them. It's been great. And then we have a distributor, Sakani, up in Northern California, which basically does, they're based out of Sacramento, and they do 22 counties up in NorCal. Looking for a Central Coast and Bay Area and Central Valley, I guess you say it. Looking to fill in the middle ground for sure. So actively reaching out to distributors to see if we can
find the right partnership.
Cover the gap.
And you recently opened, I guess not that recently, another tap room in Escondido, California. Could you tell me a little about the different locations and kind of what they're about?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have 3 locations. We opened Purgatory Lounge in downtown Escondido. Thank you. In September 22 was like the official grand opening. Ayo. Cheers to that.
Love to hear that.
So that one was a bit of a unicorn because it was our landlord actually was going to put their own tasting room in there called Cismontane Brewing. And then COVID, they decided to go another direction. So they had this almost already built out tasting room ready to go. So we were basically able to like walk in there and, do the last 20-25% and get it up and running, which saved us a lot of time just doing all your permits and all this stuff with the city. So we got it up and running pretty quickly and just in time for the slow season. No, we got to capitalize on a few months. Hurry up and wait. But that's done really well for us, and we have a really awesome loyal customer base out in Escondido. So it's great. It's a great little spot. It's a little bit more intimate than our Oceanside location. Obviously, we don't do any production out of there. We have a nice patio. It's covered, but it's and then we have kind of, like I said, more intimate in the sense we have some like bench seating. It's a little narrower. It's a little bit more not warehouse setting.
Yeah, Oceanside. When I walked in there, it's huge.
It's a big spot.
Yeah.
Cheers first.
Cheers. Yes. Yeah. So here we're drinking one of our new core brands called Stay Chill. It's a gluten reduced blonde ale. It's actually the only gluten reduced ale that we have in our lineup outside of our seltzer. So that was one of the most requested things that up until that brand that we just never capitalized on in the sense of being a provide for something for everybody if they had like a gluten allergy or something like that.
So do you think your increased distribution sales are attributed? Walk us through what this new core lineup, I mean, introducing or changing your core beers is a pretty big undertaking. So maybe walk us through what you changed it to and what the decision making behind that was. And if you think that affected that positive growth that you're experiencing.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So one thing that we used to have was the Plague Doctor was always our brand ambassador, like our character. And it had a really awesome story that we can get into about Black Plague in the Dark Ages and the Plague Doctor's role and all that. And it was the shield, and then we'd have the brand. But as we evolved, just like naturally, it was like a little cluttered and it was a little distracting, and it was really hard to identify each brand. And what we really wanted to do was kind of create more standalone brands to build followings for those brands. So we tried. Gothica was actually a brand that we've had since 2018. So this is one of the OGs that has the only one that's kind of made it through all of all of the years of evolution of the brand. But it kind of started with this one. It was, you know, the Mexican flag, basically. You have the snake and the eagle, but it was a standalone, and we kind of saw that it had its own kind of cult following for that reason, and it kind of had its own message. And I think that's one thing that we were, I guess, we weren't hitting on, capitalizing on, was we didn't have a message for a lot of the brands.
Interesting.
And so we wanted to rethink the marketing in the sense that how would a customer and how would a buyer like identify with that product? You know, like what's the emotional connection behind that brand? And that really was the start of like changing the whole approach to the marketing and the brands.
Yeah, what a good question.
Yeah, so 2024 was really the year where we're like 3 out of the 4 of our cores are just been released this year as a core product. Wow. So, and you can kind of see that with the branding. So we added a little bit more color to the lineup as well, so it just stood out. Traditionally, they were all very black, and it was like a void on the shelf, like when you'd walk. So that was something we needed to rethink. But also, you can see that Black Plague kind of takes a back seat to the branding, and that's to, again, reinforce that actual brand. And each one of these is kind of to relate to or trigger an emotion. So, you know, with everything that we've gone through for the last 4 years, there's a lot of self-reflection, a lot of self-discovery, hopefully, and that's what kind of all of these represent. So Stay Chill was actually spawned from the idea that the world's going through chaos right now, and you can really only control how you react. You can't obviously control other people or how people, you know, converse or treat you, but or the things that are happening to you. You can just control how you react to those things. So that's kind of a reminder to stay chill, relax. The world's nuts. Just, you know, crack a stay chill and just like absorb it and keep a level head, right?
Absolutely.
So it kind of goes into the rest of these real quickly. Troublemaker was kind of geared more towards the DIYer, the skateboarder, the rebel, the surfer, the more unorthodox approach to whether that's a career or just outlook on life in general. Or, you know, you've just done 40 hours or 50 grueling hours of the week. It's Friday night and you're ready to get into a little trouble. So Troublemaker kind of relates to that mentality. And then Open Mind was fittingly on a hazy IPA, which is a relatively new style in the scheme of things. So it's if you're tapping into your creative mindset, just keeping an open mind to new possibilities, you'll stumble and create a new beer style, and that kind of just that whole way of looking at life in general.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Hey craft beer lovers, don't miss Craft Beer Con 2024 on August 13th at Miracosta College San Alejo campus. This is your chance to dive deep into the craft beer community with expert-led seminars on brewing, business, and culture. Network with industry pros, explore the trade show, and enjoy free lunch and happy hour with your ticket purchase. Don't miss out on this incredible event. Secure your spot today at sdbeer.com/sdcbc. Cheers to a great time.
Do you use like a lot of it's very stemmed from like American traditional tattoo art. Do you use a graphic artist who kind of dabbles in that as well? Like what's the story on the art or sourcing the art?
Yeah, so it's actually my business partner, Jared Doss. He's the CEO. He's also a very, very talented graphic artist.
Wow, that's helpful to have.
Yeah. You want to talk about adding value? Like this guy crushes it. So not only is he a really good artist, he has this amazing skill of looking objectively at his art, and I think that's a skill in itself. A lot of artists get very emotionally attached to naturally because it's an extension of their the way their view, and he's just so able to be like, hey, what do you think? And I'll be like, oh, this, that, and be like, all right, cool, boom, change it. Like he doesn't even so it allows us to work really quickly and not have to dance around like massaging egos.
I love it.
Yeah.
But
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So him and I, we've always had a great relationship, but we've given permission to each other just to be like raw and blunt, and we won't take offense, So
you don't have time for it.
Don't have time for it. And so that was another thing. I'm glad you brought that up because, again, in older renditions of the brands, they were very intricate. There was a lot of design per square inch, I guess you could say. And we really wanted to strip it down and be cognizant of, like, if I'm, 6 to 8 feet away looking at a shelf, like, can I make out what that is?
Yeah. The first brewery I was at, we really, I don't want to say we executed it well, but I learned quickly that just because a can or, it was a tap handle or bombers back then, but just because a tap handle looks cool on its own, you put it next to 30 other tap handles and you can't see it. Like, I don't want to say like dumbing it down is not the right way to say it, but like simplifying it to the point where it's unmistakable is really important.
Totally. Couldn't agree more. And that's an art. Like, people think like, oh, it's so simple, but it's like,
yeah. Or if it sits on a shelf and there's a price tag right in front of it, what is it covering?
Totally.
Like there's different ways of merchandising that can affect the way that you need to design things. And individually things look awesome a lot. I was like, this looks so cool. But comparatively, like you are competing,
Yeah.
Like there is competition and drawing attention at least from the people that are drinking beer.
Well, I think we kind of saw that in the last couple of years as well, is like a lot of breweries got really colorful really quickly on the shelf, and it was just like
very
almost
much
like
so.
a color palette on the shelf, So I think tapping into that finally and adding some of our staying on brand, but adding a little bit more color and individuality to the brands has definitely helped with the identifying it on the shelf.
Now, I think that with each of these, obviously, like you can definitely tell that these have some very strong branding now. And I've always thought that Black Plague as a company has also had really strong branding. That's been one of your strengths from the beginning. How a little, like, I know your guys' story, but like for the people listening, how does your guys' story kind of play into the current branding, and how do you keep that theme going through with each individual brand?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. I'll try to summarize to some degree, because if you can't tell, I can go down some rabbit holes. But so before I got into beer and brewing, I was a professional skateboarder, and so a path less traveled. And a lot of it was DIY. A lot of it was figuring it out on your own and not really conforming to an SOP or having official employee reviews, stuff like that. So our brand always kind of resonated with that crew, you know what I mean? Right. More self-discovery, more just going for it, and experimentation, that kind of thing, just a little bit more raw. And then my business partner, Jared, he actually came from Sony Entertainment. So he came from a total opposite, very corporate, polished background. And I think it started to drive him nuts because, as you can tell, he's a very talented artist, among other things. But the corporate world wasn't scratching that entrepreneurial itch, and it wasn't allowing him to be expressing himself creatively and artistically. So I think those two worlds of him and I coming together kind of spawned the whole backbone, the ethos of Black Plague. And then just calling it Black Plague, there's a backstory in the Dark Ages and having the plague doctor being this misunderstood, darker figure. But he would get hired by the city, contracted by the city to go into these plague-ridden territories and treat the sick, whether regardless of their financial status or hierarchy. And I think he was kind of that takes a lot of courage, and I think he was a very misunderstood.
And sacrifice. I mean, that's dangerous, right?
Totally. So that's a lot of courage, and I think that also resonated with our brand. It's a little misunderstood, but you kind of want to have that DIY hero story in the sense that you're speaking to everybody, like, against all odds. You gotta believe in yourself and have the courage to get out and do it, whether that's brewing, skating, designing, whatever you choose. But you can do it. And
that's continued through collaborations like the beer Tony Hops. Could you tell us a little bit about that? I mean, as a San Diegan born and raised, like, that's, we're proud that somebody like him is calls San Diego his home, and it's cool to see that expressed through a collaboration that, you know, affects our industry.
Absolutely. Yeah. So Tony is one of our investors, and I've known him for, has to be over 20 years now. So we ride for Bones Wheels, or rode, I should say. He still gets to ride. Not all of us can be Tony Hawk. So once, you know, my career was kind of on the back end, and we put this business plan together, you know, I think building that relationship over 20 years with a lot of the guys that are involved kind of helped. The integrity was there. They knew it wasn't like I'm going to pull the wool over their eyes. And you know, obviously we're celebrating our 7-year anniversary now. And I think it got him excited to be a part of something else off the board as well that still like supported our community. And I think that's one thing with skateboarding in general is not a lot of guys look at the after. What are you going to do after? So I think whenever there's an opportunity to support a professional skateboarder in an endeavor beyond just being on the board, I think we all get excited to like rally and get behind one of our own kind of thing.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's pretty awesome. I saw a meme this last week that was like, if Taylor Swift is so good, why wasn't she on Tony Hawk Pro Skater?
It would have sold.
Yeah.
Right?
It was definitely talking to a certain generation with that one. But you see, you know, collaborations that are similar, like El Segundo, Stone Cold Steve Austin has been like killed it. And he's been so prevalent, at least in Southern California beer events. And I think even when he wrestles, he drinks his beer now, which is like,
it's awesome.
it's so cool. And it makes a lot of sense, you know, to bring in partners to collaborate with that resonate with your ethos and brand that aren't always beer.
Yeah. Oh, 100% for sure. I think there's a nice balance like between doing collaborations with other breweries, and then evolving and then adding in a lifestyle one just to kind of mix it up, and obviously diversify your attention and gather a bigger demographic for sure. Yeah.
I think I can think of some others like the 394 from AleSmith, the Tony Gwynn beer. I know that Belching Beaver has their Deftones collaborations. Like there's definitely some you know, examples out there of partnerships that they're outside of beer.
Yeah, totally. And to that point, it's like I didn't really grow up listening to Deftones, and it wasn't for Belching Beaver's beer, I wouldn't even think.
Yeah,
you
that's
know.
crazy.
And then I was like, oh, what is this?
That's actually an interesting idea. Is like, you know, a lot of times they're partnering with bigger lifestyle brands, thinking or like or you know, famous people as a way to bring new audience to the beer. But it actually goes both directions,
both ways,
right?
yeah.
Like you said, like, you know, you might now all of a sudden be a Deftones fan.
Totally. Yeah.
Because you really like Phantom Bride the beer.
Yeah. Exactly. Hey, it's a good beer.
Yeah,
Troy, it's a good beer, man.
it is a good beer. But before we have to wrap up, I think we would be missing by not talking about your social media shorts, or I don't know what you call them, but like the content that you guys put out, I think is such. I know a lot of people in the industry that comment or will share it.
That's awesome.
And it's really recognized as it's not so much about your beer as much as just like trying to develop engaging content. Could you talk about like what that social media program looks like and why you guys spend so much time goofing off?
Well, I'm glad it looks like that, you know. I know I come home, my wife's like, oh, did you just goof off all day at work again? And it's funny how strategic it actually is behind the scenes, you know.
Yeah.
A lot of it's smoke and mirrors in that sense. We do enjoy those days, but it's more of a concise planning day where we look at other viral media and other trending sounds, all that stuff. And then, you know, we bank a whole thing of content, and then we basically pick through each of the content and see like, how would this be relevant to our brand? And I think the biggest change, we basically had a meeting late last year, and our social media was getting pretty stagnant, and we were stuck at a certain amount of
another beer
followings.
can on the bar, or somebody holding a pint glass. Yeah.
Right. And it's like, yeah, there's nothing engaging about that. It's like, here, a new beer, buy this.
Yeah.
It's like, what? No, like why? No.
Yes, it's an IPA.
Why?
Cool.
Yeah. But once upon a time, when the boom of all these brands, I mean, the days of like beer release and you had a mile long people standing out, and then it got saturated and we're not the shiny new toy anymore. And I think the biggest thing for us was realizing that we're not the main character. And I think so many brands try to make it about themselves. And it's like, no, your customer's the main character. You're just a guide.
Yeah.
As to, what you're basically helping them decide what move they're going to make next, So that was the whole approach shift for us. It was create viral, engaging content that was relatable to your customer, that they wanted to go ahead and, to your point, share it with other people. Why? Because it spoke to them and they're like, oh my God, that's so me. Or, oh, that's so-and-so. I got to share it with them, And that was it. And if we could sprinkle, a can into the video to kind of tie the room together, like so be it. But we're not going to force feed product down your throat, because it's nobody wants to be force fed sales.
Yeah, there's this interesting. So I do marketing as like a date. That's like my main gig, right?
Nice,
and so when people are talking to me about marketing, I always just explain it's like it's a way for you to connect your brand to your customer. That's all it is. And so you have to find places where your brand and your customers meet and kind of create stuff in that realm, right?
Yep.
And so to do that, you have to be very confident in what your brand is. You have to be very confident in who your customer is, and then like know how to relate the two. And so I think what you're doing with that media is like saying, okay, how can I make this relevant to my brand and my story? And then what will my customers actually want to see? And so that sounds like you're doing it exactly right.
Yeah, and they don't all hit, and
It never will.
It never will, but it is a bit of a buckshot. You got to be consistent, and it's funny, you look back at the analytics and sometimes some hit right away and they go, and other times some won't hit, and then all of a sudden, like a month later, it'll catch this wave, and then that one will go nuts.
I looked through, some have pretty high views.
Yeah, it's pretty wild, actually.
Yeah, when I started looking through them, I mentioned it before, but the one where you're coming out in your robe and you're like, the guy's running by, and you're like, are you all right? Somebody chasing you? Like, why in the hell are you running?
I will admit,
then cracking a beer in the morning, maybe morning or not, I don't know, but I think it's relatable, right? And maybe not like the act of doing that, but like, I know I need to exercise, and like I go for a walk every morning, but I probably partake too much.
Yeah, exactly. So there you go, right? It's super relatable content, and they can identify themselves within the content. So I think that's definitely starting to build a lot of momentum, which is awesome. Yeah.
Well, we appreciate you sitting down with us today. Is there any specific channel that you would like everybody to follow you on, and what do you have coming up next?
Yeah, I mean, we're most active on Instagram. I don't know if that's because we're in our 40s and that's now the new Facebook for our generation. But it's just Black Plague Brewing on Instagram. We are on the other channels, and we're starting to spend more time. But man, it is such a full-time job, and you really do need a team to make sure you're executing on all that. So I would say follow us there. And then just to go back to our tasting rooms, we have 2 anniversaries coming up. At the end of July, the last weekend of July is our 1-year anniversary for our North Park location, Dearly Departed. And then coming in at the end of August, the last weekend of August, is our 2-year anniversary for Purgatory Lounge in Escondido. So those would, hopefully, when this episode comes out, those are relevant then.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I'd say those are the 2 that are coming up. And then this year we're really looking to continue to refine our core focus on our 4 brands, our core 4, and looking to expand distribution deeper into the California region. We really want to make sure that we get our backyard dialed in.
Awesome.
That makes sense. Well, thank you for watching the Capital of Craft podcast. If you like what you watched, make sure you subscribe and click the notification bell icon to see more. And if you want to follow us on social media at SD Brewers, we're active on mostly Instagram as well, but some others, all the other platforms.
We'll see if TikTok's still around, right?
Yeah, I know. Yeah, we start plugging TikTok, and by the time it airs, then all of a sudden it's banned. Yeah.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Cheers, guys. Appreciate you having me.
We actually have beer to cheers with.
Right? I was like, this has to be like a prerequisite. You can't show up with no beer.